let me explain to y'all what was going on, right? So I was editing the video. Come to find out, the whole video I just recorded just went away. I'm so upset about that. But anyway, I just want to thank you guys for joining me today on This Is Spiritual. Welcome to This Is Spiritual YouTube channel. And to be honest with you, I'm super excited about this channel. Why? I don't feel like I own the channel. I feel like one of many people that are coming to this platform to represent our communities, not only black communities, but the Hispanic, Native American, all of the indigenous communities, all of the underfunded, undersupported, represented communities that we represent. And to be honest with you, this is spiritual. I mean, it means the most to me. Why do we say this is spiritual? Because the Bible tells us that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. We wrestle against principalities, members of the darkness. This is definitely a spiritual war that we were all born into, and that a lot of us don't stop. And just like the show that we saw on Netflix, actually take the minute and the moment to look up and see that we were definitely born into a spiritual war. And either you can run from it, or you can act like it doesn't exist, or you can stand and fight. So it's one thing that I say, and it's Yakati, and I'm so happy to be here. I ain't gonna lie. So I just had to get that out of me. So, all right. So what we're talking about today is the human right to water and the civil rights violation regarding medications and chemicals in the drinking water. So one thing I want you to always remember, if you're in the audience to This Is Spiritual, besides hit the like button, hit the share button, and definitely subscribe, it's to remember that everything that we talk about is spiritual warrior intel. So if you're here, you're obviously a spiritual warrior. So this is our intelligence that we need to go throughout our day to be aware of what's actually holding us down and trying to oppress us, so that we can be stronger, so that we can be more unified. So this is our spiritual warrior intel. Again, I'm very excited. Let's jump right into it. So what we're talking about today is we're talking about we're talking about the civil rights violation regarding medication and chemicals in drinking water, right? So what's important to consider is, if someone like a totalitarian government, a supervillain, the bad guys, right? If they desire to control the U.S. territories, the U.S. population, then doing it by means of military might, we will see that would be extremely difficult, if not already impossible. Why? Because there are a lot of people over in the U.S., dog. A lot of people. Not only that, a lot of people have firearms. So the last time that I checked it, I think it's like 315 million plus people in the U.S. But if you look at the 300 million plus firearms that the citizens have, then that's a lot of firepower. Not to mention reserves, not to mention the oath keepers, not to mention our military might on U.S. soil. You're dealing with a lot, right? So it's obviously, and this is things that military strategists will tell you, right? So it's obviously a more simpler, more efficient way to control a country other than military occupation. And history tells us to successfully occupy the U.S., one must consider controlling essential life-sustaining resources, right? So that's something to remember. Essential life-sustaining resources. Would you consider water to be that? Well, I would. So let's move on to what the CDC says about the topic of water fluoridation, right? So when you consider water fluoridation, consider the U.S. population. So the last time that these numbers were updated, this was in December 31st, 2018. To be totally honest with you, I find it completely odd that the last time that the CDC updated national water fluoridation statistics was 2018, but they can tell us about any and everything else. But moving on, so what, right? The total U.S. population in 2018, December 31st, was 327,167,434 people in the U.S. population, right? So the percent, let's look at the percent then of U.S. population receiving fluoridated water. And we see that percent is 63.4%. And then you look at the percent of the population on community water services receiving fluoridated water, that's 73%. So that's some alarming, more than 50, even though 50 would have been concerning. That's some alarming statistics, right? And these stats were prepared using the water systems data reported by states to the CDC water fluoridation reporting system. And again, as of December 31st, 2018. All right. So that's pretty disturbing. Now let's take a look at these facts are from FAN. And FAN is fluoridation advocacy network or something like that. We'll take a deeper dive and look at them later, but these updates are from FAN, and I just want to go over what some of these stats say. Okay, so let's just look at my points real quick on the side. My points say that 97% of Western Europe has rejected water fluoridation. So you look at 97% of Western Europe rejecting water fluoridation. That's pretty striking right there. That in Europe, people are saying we're not having the water fluoridation. Since 2010, 274 communities have rejected water fluoridation, right? 64 studies have linked water fluoridation to reduced IQ in children, and excessive water fluoride can cause arthritis. Arthritis is what? The number one cause of disability in the United States. Then you take a look at the National Toxicology Program, or NTP. It indicates that fluoride is a mutagen that can cause genetic damage or contribute to cancer. So when you look up the definition of mutagen, let's take a look at that. Define mutagen. All right, so mutagen is an agent such as radiation or a chemical substance which cause genetic mutation, right? So the NTP defines fluoride as a mutagen. Okay, so we should. This is something that we should be concerned by. This is something that we should act. And I promise, I have a call to action for everybody to definitely join me, and not just join me, but join the fight in making our community leaders, our government officials, and lobbyists, making them aware that we want to change our community mandates in reference to fluoridated drinking water. All right, so let's read this. It says fluoride is the only drug that is forced as mass medication of the population with no control of dosing. That's what the first stat says, right? All right, so looking at the two most common types of fluoride in your drinking water, that's sodium silica fluoride and hydrofluoric acid, which are waste products from the wet scrubbing system of the fertilizer industry and are classified as hazardous waste. 23 plus human studies and 100 plus animal studies link fluoride to brain damage. 50% of the ingested fluoride is deposited in the bones of children, while only 10% is stored in adults. And 41% of American children have dental fluorosis, which is caused by excessive fluoride, according to the evidence from the CDC. So again, everybody tells you to listen to the CDC. Why don't you go look at their CDC statistics on water fluoridation, especially you parents out there. All right, and 99% of all fluoride added to water goes down the drain and into the environment. So you remember what they taught us in school about evaporation, condensation, precipitation, things like that, so on and so forth. Well, fluoride is in that, so when we're considering what we're drinking, what we're giving our children, we definitely need to consider these statistics, right? So just moving on to fluoride in the black communities. And according to the according to the CDC, when you look at the increased risk of biological susceptibility or greater fluoride intake, you have to consider communities of color, right? So we have higher rates of infants using formula. We have reduced milk consumption due to higher prevalence in lactose intolerance. You have depressed nutrients intakes and things like that. Higher levels of lead exposure, higher rates of health conditions, kidney disease, diabetes, things like that we always hear within our community. You have to consider, is this genetic for us, or is this an attack? Is this genetic, or are we being attacked? If we are being attacked, let's be realistic about it. And how are we being attacked? One of the easiest ways is life-sustaining resources, like we're talking about. So have we considered our water supply? And this is what we're talking about today. So if you look at what Andrew Young said, Andrew Young was a previous Atlanta mayor, and he also served as a UN ambassador. And he said he's deeply concerned about poor families who have babies and cannot afford unfluoridated drinking water. He's concerned about families who have babies and cannot afford unfluoridated drinking water. This guy served as a former Atlanta mayor. I used to live in Atlanta, so I can tell you it is a lot of poor families who have babies who cannot afford sustainable unfluoridated drinking water. And what I mean by sustainable is, yeah, you might bring in, and I know Fiji water is a poor example, but it's the only thing coming to mind right now. You're bringing in Fiji water today, but you can't afford to always, give your baby formula from Fiji water. You can't always afford that. So a lot of families are affected by their drinking water being mass medicated, right? Then you also look at Dr. Gerald Darby. He said, first and foremost, water fluoridation takes away people's choices. Second, fluoridated disproportionately harms members of the black community. Third, we can't control the doses of fluoride people ingest when we put fluoride in the drinking water. You can't control the doses. So these are things that we have to consider. Again, going back to so many black people will tell you that they're lactose intolerant. Again, I pose the question, is it coming from being mass medicated through our water disproportionately within our communities? Is it coming from that? Right? LULAC, I guess that's how you say it. I'm going to get it right though. All right, so LULAC stands for the League of United Latin American Citizens. I want to take a quick pause real quick. Black people should do something like this. And then doing my research, I'm so committed to coming up with programs like this. And I would love to partner with people of like mind. So definitely, if you're interested, let me know in the comment section. Tell me I'm interested and we should talk later. But anyway, LULAC is, they did something that was very noble. They released a civil rights violation regarding forced medication through drinking water. And what they did was they adopted a resolution. And a resolution isn't necessarily a bill, but it just lets businesses and government know how to move forward with the citizens of one's jurisdiction. And this is something that we can do all throughout the U.S., all throughout our communities. But let's move on right into it. So LULAC is the oldest Hispanic civil rights organization in the U.S. And they recently adopted a resolution decreeing water fluoridation as a civil rights abuse. And the resolution declares that adding fluoride to the water supplies is essentially illegal mass medication of the public. And it also mentions that in certain scientific studies that it highlights actually the dangers of ingesting fluoride, particularly amongst those with pre-existing conditions and affected disproportionately by it. But it also highlights public health authorities having ignored the science that supports that in favor for their pro-fluoride agenda. So that's something to think about. And the reason why I say pro-fluoride agenda is because it's definitely related to autism. It's definitely related to lower IQs, more docile people, a more dependent society. And again, looking at people leveraging their relationships, leveraging their connections, and you look at the League of United Latin American Citizens in conjunction with FAN, the Fluoride Action Network. You look at those two organizations partnering together to instill change in their community, and that's something that we should all mimic throughout the U.S. and definitely in the Black community. So we spoke about LULAC. We spoke about the resolution decreeing water fluoridation as a civil rights abuse. Now let's speak about the illegal collection, the charges of illicit rainwater collection. So you see this guy right here, right? This man was in Oregon. He goes by the name of Gary Harrington. That's his name. He's had a property in Oregon for over 37 years. He owns over 170 acres. Some of the rainwater collected on his property just sat there in the reservoir. But he was charged. He was thrown in jail for 30 days for essentially illegally collecting rainwater on his own property. So you consider, hey, the water's coming down. I can't collect it, but I can drink. I can drink this poisonous water that you're giving me. You know, that is frustrating. You know, and why is the Oregon government so adamant against citizens storing and sourcing their own water? Why are you so adamant about that? You know, and then you look at other Western states such as Utah, Colorado, Washington, that have long outlawed the practice, basically saying that storing water is a crime. So if you think about the American spirit of private property and ownership and right to self-determination, you can essentially say that that ideology is being threatened right now, right? So then you look at pharmaceuticals lurking in U.S. drinking water. You can't collect it. All right, so let's look at the options we do have. And now you look at, according to MSNBC, the presence of pharmaceuticals in water at sewage treatment plants downstream from drug manufacturing facilities are much higher than the levels at plants where there are no drug makers upstream. So let's look at what MSNBC says. It says pharmaceuticals lurking in U.S. drinking water. A vast array of pharmaceuticals, including antibiotics, anticonvulsants, mood stabilizers, and sexual hormones, have been found in drinking water supplies of at least 41 million Americans. That's alarming. So I have mood stabilizers in my drinking water, sexual hormones, antibiotics, anticonvulsants. That means anti-seizure medication, you know? And I think one of these things I was looking at even said it was tranquilizing chemical compounds in there. So let's take a look at the European Monitoring Center for Drugs and Drugs Addiction. Just to let you know, I'll make sure I link all of the resources, all of my material below, so you guys can do the research for yourself. But it's assessing illicit drugs in wastewater. Okay, so the drugs includes opiates, tranquilizers, barbiturates, and other active pharmaceutical ingredients. This PDF also mentioned that pharmaceutical companies are quick to say that their wastewater doesn't pollute water systems around them, but the analysis show that they aren't being completely honest. It was a muscle relaxer, Mexalone. It is Metaxalone. This drug was hundreds times higher than the level at which federal regulators can order a review of a drug's environmental impact. This drug was 100 times higher than that. So again, going back to how disturbing these are. So hang tight, we'll wrap it up soon, but I want you guys to know that there is a call to action that we can do. But if you want me to spoil it for you, it's taking this matter into your own hand and meeting with local and state government for the change that we want to see. So pushing along through it. You're probably asking yourself, but the drugs are removed during the water treatment process, right? You would think that, but if you look at the study from the EPA, or the Environmental Protection Agency, it found that an antibiotic, which is going down the drains at a Pfizer factory in Kalamazoo, Michigan, is still detectable after the water was treated. And then you look at the drug Lincomyn, which is Lincomycin. It was found in a 2008 study to make human cancer in a kidney cell and fish liver cells when combined with over a minute of concentration of other drugs. So let me break that down. Within a water supply, you look at this antibiotic in combination with other drugs in your system for over a minute, it can produce cancerous cells in the kidney. That is an attack on your body. That's a what? A mutagen, right? That's a mutagen. And mutagens are mostly what? Radioactive. Not here. We're looking at pharmaceuticals in drinking water, even after the water treatment process. So if you look at the time of these studies, the Pfizer spokesman, Rick Chambers, he admitted that they didn't test wastewater leaving facilities, assuring the media, however, that they were in compliance with the law. So are you testing it in compliance, or are you not testing it and you're not in compliance? But you can't do both. But they're lying to us. And I hate to say it like that, but they definitely are lying to us. So what do we do about it? Right? So if you look at the USGS, I thought I spoke about this. I probably already spoke about this, but the USGS reports, it talks about pharmaceuticals, hormones, and other organic wastewater contaminants in U.S. streams. And it shows the map right there. And again, I'll link this down below so you guys can see this. But many of us know, right? A lot of us know that certain drugs are being pumped into the sick and often unaware citizens of this country. And as a result of this knowledge, we avoid certain pharmaceutical companies. We avoid certain things to the best of our ability. But what if these substances we work so hard to avoid, what if they find their ways in our body regardless? Especially seeing that pharmaceuticals are a growing problem that even exists after water treatment, right? So even though pharmaceutical companies may be quote unquote following the laws don't mandate any ethical accountability, right? So again, moving along, you consider, are chemicals in drinking water giving people cancer, right? So you got traces of 18 unregulated chemicals were found in drinking water from more than 1/3 of U.S. water utilities in a nationwide sampling, according to new unpublished research from the North American 34th Annual Meeting of SECAT by federal scientists. It also includes 11 pre-fluorinated compounds and herbicides and 2 solvents, caffeine, an antibacterial compound, metal, and antidepressants from the American Health News. That's from their reports, right? So we see that contaminated water contributes to mental illness. So going back to that USGS or U.S. Geological Survey and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, they analyzed single samples using untreated and treated water from 25 different facilities. We just spoke about those facilities, right? But we see in their research, 21 of the detected contaminants are in treated drinking water from at least 9 different companies. 18 of the chemicals are not regulated under Federal Drinking Water Act, so utilities don't have to meet any limit or even monitor for these chemicals, right? So again, this is pretty alarming. So if they don't have to monitor for them, then we should be setting the standards of what they have to abide by. We should be having local county jurisdictions and resolutions decreeing that this is an illegal practice in this community. That's what I'm asking each one of us to do within our communities. And if you need help, then this is spiritual is the place to ask for that, right? Because we're definitely building an alliance. All right. So 100 million plus Americans exposed to drinking water, to toxic drinking water, right? That's what we're dealing with. We just looked at 41 plus. Now we're looking at 100 million plus, right? But let's move on to the EAP. 2 of the most common perfluorinated compounds is PFOS and PFOA in the utilities, right? They've been detected in the blood of nearly all people in the United States. PFOS and PFOA has been detected in nearly all of our blood, right? And what are these linked to? Let's look at it. It's linked to pesticides. It's linked to disinfection byproducts, chemicals used in commerce, waterborne pathogens, pharmaceuticals, and biological toxins. That's what these 2 compounds, and perfluorinated compounds, might I add, that's what they're commonly in, right? So the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, they say that it's no need to act on the fact that these toxic ingredients have been linked to the loss of IQ or increase in behavioral or perception problems, as long that has been long been documented in drinking water. But we see that this is actually not true. So we should persuade our local governments that this poses a serious risk to the public and it should be regulated. This is what we have to almost mandate within our communities, right? So these two compounds that we mentioned, they're mostly found frequently in a variety of industrial processes, including manufacturing of some non-stick material and some stain resistant food packaging, fabrics, and cookware. So this is where you can find these compounds pretty much sprayed and contaminated all over, right? All right, moving right along. So you look at this Scotchgard PFOS that was phased out in 2002, but it's been linked to attention disorder in children and thyroid disease in men. We're talking about Scotchgard. So a panel of scientists, they concluded that there's a probable link between, this is a PFOS, but PFOA in drinking water and high cholesterol, okay, ulcerative colitis, thyroid disease, testicular cancer, kidney cancer, pregnancy-linked hypertension. This is what the EPA is reporting that these chemicals are linked to, right? So when you have to consider that the research is actually clear that these two chemicals are being detected in people's blood. They are linked to various illnesses, various deficiencies and mutagens, right? And even if when you look at the PubMed, I mean, the reason why this is a call to action for some people that's different than, and I'm not talking about you guys, I'm talking about somebody else, right? But a lot of people are paying attention to the CDC now. Are you only paying attention to the you know what? Or are you paying attention to everything, right? Because when you look at the National Library of Medicine, they say that there's an association between the perfluorinated acid and thyroid disease in the U.S. National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, right? So in addition to people being mass medicated against their will, many water districts buy sodium fluoride, which is classified as a poison, and that's being added to their water supplies consistently. You know, it's strong evidence that it links to disorders affecting teeth, bones, brains, thyroid glands, and again, lower IQ. So despite these facts, the government continues to aim to fluoridate most of American water, most of American public water, right? So we understand that it's a toxic horror, right? Found in our drinking water, for the American population, and higher concentrations in minority communities. We previously reported on the studies that found that, you know, numerous pharmaceutical drugs, from antidepressants like Prozac to sexual hormones, currently contaminate the water supply of millions, right? So it's now clearly the responsibility of people everywhere to lobby representatives at a state and local level to implement their own drinking water regulations. That's what we can do in response to the combination of the negligence or downright just criminal actions and just lying of the federal government and companies and pharmaceutical industries on this matter. So I just want to thank you guys for, you know, listening, especially if you made it all the way through. Don't forget to again hit the like button, hit the share button, and the subscribe. In addition to what we were talking about today, millions of more people are again being mass medicated. So again, I'll say this one last time, it's our responsibility as people everywhere to take this matter into our own hands, especially when you look at case studies like their resolution that was adopted. That's something that I would love to see, especially my community doing. So you're going to get a lot more videos from us. Again, this is spiritual. This is spiritual warrior intelligence. And I want everybody out there to be well informed, especially if you have people depending on you. So I want to thank you guys for watching. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at darbyisking, and you can also look at my personal YouTube channel. That's Darby's Room. So I'm very excited. I can't stop talking, but I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. And again, thank you guys, and all praises to the Most High.